Great. Well, good evening to everybody, to the cross-party group Cycling, Walking and Buses. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Claudia Beamish, MSP, and I'm not Graham Simpson. As you can see, he was to chair today, but he asked if either Alison and I could step in because he had something else that he had to urgently do at short notice. And so I did step into the chair, well, I did the last chairing, and Alison has asked me to say that very impressively, she is at the moment cycling home unless she's joined us yet. So I'm sure Colin will let her in once she arrives to join the meeting. I'm not actually going to tonight go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves because as has already been highlighted, we've only got an hour, and I think that the best way to deal with that, perhaps with the agreement of the people who are here, is that we, when it comes to the Q&A after our speakers, or indeed any other points that members and observers and everybody wants to highlight, they could just the first time they speak say their name, and if they're representing an organisation as well, I think that would be helpful. So without more ado, I think we'll go straight to highlighting what the agenda is. And I'm sure, Colin, you'll keep me right if I get any of this wrong, but we're going to have the minute confirmation of minutes and matters arising, and then we're going to have also there are a few points in that, and then we're going to have our very short AGM, and then we're going to listen to both our speakers, and the title and the way forward tonight is Driving Scotland's Green Recovery, and that will be interesting and exciting. So I'll come to those introductions at that point. Then we have a Q&A, and then also Colin suggested that we discuss the future one meeting that we have, and what that might entail and when it would be. And in view of, again, the fact that we only have an hour, if there's any very urgent business, then we can put it under AOCB, but I would encourage people perhaps to put something in the chat if it's about an event or whatever, so that we can give as much time as we can to our speakers and to discussion. But is there anything, if you could just indicate now, either by putting an R in the chat box or putting your virtual hand, or indeed your real hand up, but preferably an R in the chat box so we can keep an eye on it. Then is there anything that anyone feels that they do need to raise at the end of the meeting? Can I just check that now? And Colin and I will see if there's anyone to bring in. No, right, okay. But as I say, I do encourage people, if there are things coming up, to put them at all points they want to make, to put them in the chat box and make sure that you've got everybody on that. Great, so we'll go straight to the minutes of the previous meeting. And those were, as I understand it, attached to the agenda. So I hope people have had a chance to have a look at those. And could I just check for accuracy first on page 1 and then on page 2? And could I ask then that somebody who was at the last meeting, please move the minutes, and somebody to second. So perhaps just raise your hand if you're happy to move them. And Colin, can you spot any hand raised? Don't be modest, people, please.
Stuart, you there with our hands up? And I can see Julianne, you had your hand up. So. Great.
Okay, so that's mover and seconder. Thank you very much. And we move on to matters arising. And I understand from Colin that all the action has been completed except for 3, but there may be other matters arising that other members want to raise. And the first one that has been highlighted is whether we've been in touch, because it has to be an MSP who's in touch with Sam Curry, who organises CPGs for the Parliament, to advise that Patrick Harvey would like to join the CPG membership. and that has been passed on to Sam, so that action's been done. I'm not sure if Patrick's here tonight, or indeed if there are any other. He is. Great. Well, welcome to you.
I'm here until over tonight, but hopefully I can join in the future.
Great. Well, you're very welcome. And then also we've got, could I just also check, just for members' information, I said we wouldn't do introductions, but if there are other MSPs here, if you could just pop your name in the chat box so that people can see who's actually here, and indeed whether Alison's arrived yet. I know Sarah Boyack was intending to join us as well. So the second point is whether we've had any response from Scottish Government regarding the letter that was sent from Alison's office regarding the traffic regulation orders, which Dave Deferred drafted and as I say, was sent from her office. So I think if Alison isn't here yet, if somebody can jog my memory to ask that at the end, if that's okay, then we can just clarify that. And then also whether Stuart's made any progress, which indeed he has. Just under the wire there, Stuart. And perhaps can I just hand over to you to very briefly tell us what you would need. I have got it in front of me, but I think it's helpful if you can just explain what you'd need before the launch and describe what it is that you're launching for those that weren't at the last meeting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this is a follow-on from the presentation I made last time around. The report wasn't quite ready. It just needs some proofing, so that I've now circulated that. It is ready to launch. It'll be a Living Streets report for the group. And what I really need is the MSPs to provide some supportive comment if they agree with the broad conclusions of it. That can be, and to get some momentum behind it, I will send it to the Scottish Government, City of Edinburgh Council especially, because a lot of it's focused on their streets and access to the Parliament. And we would hope with those comments to get a press release out within the next 3 weeks or so, just before beginning of December, before everything really starts to shut down. And what I would also propose is that depending on the reaction we get, I can report back to the group if we get any reaction, that the group may want to call some of the interested parties for a future meeting, such as City of Edinburgh Council's asked them what they're actually doing around the streets beside the Parliament.
Right, thank you very much. And certainly I know that the conveners and other MSPs will have a careful look at it. And I think, having had a quick look this evening at the report, which you sent a link to online to the conveners and to Sarah Boyack, and I'm sure you would forward to Patrick and other people who are interested, who are MSP members of the group, that we'll be supportive and look forward to you being in touch. I can't speak for them because they haven't seen it, but for myself, I'm positive, and it reflects what was discussed at the last meeting. So we'll help in any way that we can.
Excellent. Okay.
Right. Are there any other comments on that from any other MSPs at this stage, or Sarah's? Are we okay to move on? Yeah. Yep. Right. Okay. So we'll move on to the AGM. And there is an annual return form, and that is we need to ask for that to be drafted and submitted within 30 calendar days of the AGM. And I think, Colin, if you're prepared to stand as secretary, I know that's not the right order for doing things in, but if you are, then that would be great. But could I also ask you, please, just to chair this part of the meeting, because we don't want to make assumptions about, although the two conveners, myself and Alison, and Deputy Convener Graham, have said they're happy to stand again. I don't want to make any assumptions. So could you just kindly do that for us, Colin, and take any nominations and seconders? That would be great. Thank you.
Sure, happy to do that. And I can confirm, yes, I'll submit the annual return form within the next 30 days as the Parliament requests. So MSPs out there, this is your chance for glory.
Let's have a vote.
I can't make, there's 3 of you. out there. And who would like to put themselves forward for a convener or co-convener? Don't like shout once. Oh, Sarah's got her hand up.
I'd like to nominate the existing co-conveners and vice convener. I'm sure they've done an excellent job and they've got another 6 months to go. That's appropriate? And then I think hope somebody else might second that.
So Patrick, would you like to say something different? Would you like to suggest we should go for a vote? Did you want to take over?
Count all the votes, count all the votes. No, happy to second Sarah's proposal.
Oh, damn. So we're not going to have a vote for the looks of it. So we have a proposal from Sarah Boyack, and I think that's a seconding from Patrick. We have no standing orders for managing these things, so I'm just making this up as I go along. So I think if the three of you that are present are happy with Sarah's proposal, then I'm going to take that as voted through. I guess I should ask you to put your hand up or something to vote, the three of you. Patrick, Sarah, Claudia.
Great. The thing is that Alison isn't here, but I would endorse that in absentia, and I think I'm pretty sure she would want to attend again as a convener.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm passing the chairing back to you now, Claudia.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll continue to do our best for you all. And also I'd like to formally thank Colin and also Mark James, who until Colin took over, I think within the last year had also been in the Secretariat. So thanks very much. And long may you continue, Colin, into the next session, whether we're here or not. Good. Okay. Is there anything else formally we need to do for the AGM, Colin, or is that?
No, that's it. That's everything.
Right. Okay. So we don't need to do any financial return at all. I don't think we deal in actual
Money.
ready, do we?
No.
So, okay, that's great. Thank you. Good. So we now come to the substantive part of the meeting and driving Scotland's green recovery. And I'm delighted first to welcome our first speaker, Keith Watson, who's the Customer Development Director of Alexander Dennis, and also has responsibility for the introduction of new bus models, which we're very much looking forward to hearing about, and generally your remarks. So if I could hand over to you, Keith, and we're all ears. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Colin's going to share the presentation, hopefully
Right.
in a second or two.
Excellent.
And here we go. Okay, so thank you for giving us the time tonight to present. Colin, if you want to just move on to the next slide. So ADL is now part of the NFI Group from the middle of last year. Originally, there was about 2,000 of us. We're now part of a team of 9,000. We have 50 facilities over 10 countries globally. The New Flyer Group is made up of New Flyer, which is primarily a city bus manufacturer. MCI is Coach, which complements our own coach business in Plaxton. And then Arbok and NFI parts are the smaller subsidiaries of it. Our overall revenue is about 2.9 billion in 2019. Move on, Colin. So as part of the NFI Group, who are ADL, I think most of the people on this call realise that we are a Scottish-based company based in Larbert and Falkirk, with facilities down in Scarborough, Skelmersdale and Guildford. We are the world's largest double-deck manufacturer with over 120 years experience of doing that. And we have extensive global experience. We sell into the Far East, Singapore, Hong Kong, New Zealand, into North America, where our parent company is based, and into Europe, namely Switzerland and Germany of recent. In the UK, we've currently got over 70% market share, but we're consistently over 50, depending on what's happening with the bus and coach orders. And we continue to be one of the fastest growing bus and coach manufacturers globally. We're spending tens of millions, and the next slide I come to, I'll show you that we spent 30 million just in the past little while. We spend tens of millions with dozens of Scottish SMEs. We've got lots of suppliers around us here in Scotland, supplying parts and technology to us. And we really appreciate that. They're highly skilled people, and I guess they've contributed in no small measure to making ADL the success that it is today. We are passionate about our technologies, and we believe we do have the widest range of powertrain options available, from diesel all the way through battery electric to hydrogen electric. Next slide, please. But you can see our footprint. Canada is where our parent company is based. We also have factories in the USA, office in Mexico, factories in the UK, offices in Germany, Ireland, manufacturing in China for the Hong Kong market, Singapore, and out into New Zealand. We primarily ship the vehicles direct to New Zealand, but just recently we've re-signed an agreement with a local builder out there. Next slide. We invest in our people. Apprentices is key to what we do, and we obviously cooperate with local colleges and universities, all our UK manufacturing sites, and we bring in a lot of summer internships to learn from them, but equally for them to see what we're all about, and then hopefully when they're finished their degrees and college courses, that they may decide to try and join us. And we have our own business and engineering graduate trainee schemes, and a management and leadership talent program. Next slide. So our vision, we want to be recognised as the world leader in the provision of buses, coaches and support services, and we aim to achieve that through our products, which will be the most reliable, and our people, who will be customer focused, passionate and committed to excellence, and our services, which we aim to be class leading. And that certainly, all of that together gives us the market share that we're seeing today and hope to maintain. Next slide. So in terms of technology leadership, we've spent over 30 million in the past few years, really looking at hybrid buses, efficient diesel, because diesel is still a clean technology, especially when it's low emission bus certified, moving into battery electric buses and hydrogen electric buses. Accessible coaches, PSVAR, our whole coach range is accessible now, and looking at technologies such as autonomous buses. There was supposed to be a number of buses running from Fife into Edinburgh this year, but that's been pushed back because of COVID, unfortunately. Next slide. So from looking at our evolution to zero emissions, we based ourselves on diesels, low emission bus certified. We moved into biogas using human and animal waste as the fuel. And then we moved into hybrid bus, which is a series electric hybrid. So there is an engine on board, but it's just a generator generating the electricity and storing that electricity in a battery, which drives the wheels. We moved into electric range as a derivative of that, which gives some zero emissions operation within city centres, whereby we can turn the engine off, therefore eliminating gaseous noise and vibration emissions. And the past few years, since 2015, we've been investing heavily into battery electric with a partner, BYD, and we're planning to launch hydrogen buses in the next 18 months or so. Next slide. As I said, we based our business on diesel. Last year, 71% of our business was diesel. And this coming year, it's going to be 40%, with our zero emission vehicles taking up the slack. I did expect to see 40% electric bus share this year, but hence COVID. But I do think that we will exceed the 41% next year. There is a huge increase in the demand for electric and clean vehicles. Next slide. So this is our electric range diesel series hybrid. It is an electric drive, as I said. It's got a 32 kilowatt battery on board. It's available in double deck just now. And we've got buses going into Brighton and Hove, and the first 280 vehicles of potentially an order for 600 going into Dublin and the rest of Ireland. And these vehicles can run for up to 5 kilometres or 3 miles in zero emissions using geofencing. The blue line on the chart shows you the route. The red area is what we call a charging zone, where the bus checks itself to make sure that it has enough battery power in order to go through the green zone, which is the zero emission zone. Whilst it's doing that, it remains well within Euro 6 regulations or emissions. In fact, it's 31% cleaner than a standard Euro 6 diesel-powered vehicle. Next slide. In terms of battery electric, we're now on the cusp of having sold 500 zero-emission buses in the UK, and we reckon by the end of next year it'll be over 1,000. The majority of the buses are in London just now. London was the first city in the UK that took the decision to go to zero emissions, and all single decks going into London currently are electric, and by 2025 all the double decks will be electric as well. But we've won Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow, and shortly some buses going into Edinburgh as well with Lothian. Glasgow's with First Group, Dundee with Explore Dundee. Move on. So our Enviro 200 is a single deck vehicle. These are available in lengths from sub 10 up to just under 12 meters. And we're now onto our third generation battery. Considering we only launched in 2015, we're now liquid cooled. Liquid cooling operates the batteries at just about human body temperature, and it maintains the battery capacity. It means that the batteries are all able to charge at a common rate, and it gives you extreme durability from the batteries. So much so that after 10 years, you'll still have 75% state of charge in the batteries, giving you over 160 miles range from these vehicles. All the batteries today are mostly stored on the roof, and it's electric heating through a heat pump and traditional seating on the vehicle. We can provide both AC and DC charging if that's required by the operators. Next slide. On our double deck, currently available at 10.9, but there's a 10.3 shorter bus coming next year. It's also in third generation batteries, and it's got a range of 130 miles at year 10. Both the Enviro 200 and Enviro 400 are going to have a battery upgrade again towards the end of next year, taking us up to nearly 450 kilowatts on board the vehicle. That will give the double deck a range of about 160 miles and the single deck 200 miles at year 10. All the batteries in this bus are what was traditionally the engine bay, are under the seats in the bus. If we put them upstairs, we'd end up with the buses toppling over. And again, all the seats forward facing, and maximising the seating capacity for passengers. Next slide. What we do when we're talking to customers, we can create CAD models showing the charging infrastructure. We can create the parking plans, and we can then, with our partners, provide the infrastructure. We can provide the electricity tariff, and we can provide repair and maintenance. A lot of our customers are a little bit unsure about electric vehicles. It's new to them. They've been used to diesels. So we tend to hold their hand a little bit until they grow in confidence. Next slide. So as I said, we've sold over 500. These are just some examples of where we have buses today. The top left picture is Waterloo, which was 47 vehicles, and at the time, back in 2016, was the largest electric fleet in Europe. The middle top is a battery energy storage system whereby the operator doesn't necessarily have enough grid power to the depot. So what we do is we trickle charge a bank of batteries throughout the day, which allows us to charge the buses overnight with the required power that they require. Top right is the one of two buses that were sold to First Glasgow and through Suleb, which was announced just over a month ago. Hopefully they're going to take another 22 single decks of that variety. Bottom right, just showing typical London bus, red in Metroline. The bottom middle is double deck buses going into Birmingham, again with a battery storage system. Move on, please. And then onto hydrogen. Initially available double deck, 10.5 meters length, using the latest Ballard fuel cell technology, which is called the Proton Exchange Membrane Liquid Cooled Fuel Cell Module. It's getting very Star Trekky. We call it the PEM. Obviously hydrogen fueled. We carry 28 kilograms of hydrogen on board the bus, and it will give a minimum of 230 miles, but probably up to 300 miles. It's all determined by the terrain. the more hills you have, the lower the mileage, the flatter it is, the higher the mileage. It has an electric drive motor connected to a standard axle, but this one uses lithium titanate oxide batteries. We should not expect to change the batteries on that vehicle for its 15 to 18 year life. We're looking to launch that in Q2 of 22. We're expecting the City of Liverpool to give us our first major order. Move on. And this is really just an example of the infrastructure required for hydrogen. Green hydrogen created by electrolysis from wind power or from solar would be tankered to the site. And you can see in the top picture some cylinders standing upright. That's a trailer which comes in from the wind farm at 350 bar. We then have to compress that further up to 500 bar and put it into storage on the site, which then allows us to fill the buses at 350 bar and get to roughly a 10-minute fill of the vehicle. That's still 3 times longer than it would take to fill a diesel bus. So we're working hard on increasing the pressures and the cascade systems to achieve that. And move on. And that's my short 10-minute presentation. I hope it was interesting, and maybe we can have some questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. That's really inspiring, and I'll just stick to the PEM bit of the technical side, but I think it's very exciting to see the massive range of the different vehicles that you have in production already, and also which are coming online in the next couple of years, and the spread not only across Scotland and the UK, but also the whole world. And so we wish you very well in these challenging times for production for everybody. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions and a lot of discussion. Thank you. And I'd now like to move to ask Andy Hyde, who is the founder of Go Upstream, to give us his presentation or discussion. I think you're going to do, and bring some others in as well, Andy. And Upstream, as many people will know, is involved with designing bus services for people with dementia, and the Better Bus project is part of what we're going to hear about this evening. And so I'll hand over to you, Andy, and we listen attentively. Thank you.
Super, thanks very much. Hope you can hear me okay?
Think so.
Great, good. So good evening, everybody. As has been said, I'm Andy Hyde from Go Upstream, a social enterprise based in Edinburgh, with a focus on bringing people with dementia together with transport organisations to design better journeys together. And I'm joined this evening by 2 colleagues who are going to say hello.
Yes, my name is Carl Greenwood. I'm from Paths for All. I'm sure many of you are already aware of us. But we're a Scottish charity based in Stirling, and our aim is to get more people walking for a happier, healthier, greener Scotland. And my role is to work with people with dementia to create more opportunities for them to join our community health walks. But also we look at how we can create more dementia-friendly walking environments, and more broadly, just looking at how we can better enable people with dementia to get out and about.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jerry King. I am 57 years old, and I live in a town called Glenothes in Fife with my wife and 3 children. And 2 years ago, at the age of 55, I was actually diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's disease. So good evening.
Thanks, Jerry. So we'd like to tell you about the Better Buses project that we've been working on together this year. Now, people with dementia have much experience and expertise to bring to the design of transport services and journey environments. And we've shown this over the past few years in projects that have been funded by the Life Changes Trust, by Disability Research on Independent Living, Department of Transport, and Transport Scotland, just to name a few. And in these projects, we brought people with dementia together with service providers, and they played an active role as researchers and designers and presenters and activists.
Yes, so to give you one example of how people with dementia contribute to improving our services at Paths for All, we deliver training for our volunteer walk leaders on how we can make our health walks safer, more accessible and enjoyable for people with dementia. And we find that this training always works best when someone with dementia is involved in the delivery of the training. So For us, it helps to underline the fact that dementia is not just about memory, but that it can affect everything from communication to the way that we sense the world with hearing and sight, which can, you know, impact somebody's experience of a walk. So by working with people with dementia, not only do we get these first-hand experiences, but it also helps to tackle some of the stigma around dementia and shows that actually it's possible to live well and to lead an active life despite all of the challenges. And the outcome of this for us is that it really helps our volunteers in terms of confidence delivering their walks. So the aim is to do things with people rather than for them or without them.
I'm a member of a group called STAND, based in Fife. STAND is a peer support group for people diagnosed with young onset dementia, their husbands, wives, partners, and children. We support each other by sharing experiences, ideas, advice, and joint activities. We know how important it is for people living with dementia to continue to have an active and very independent as feasible by getting about to support their Alzheimer's activities. Prior to lockdown, I was engaged in the Fife Dementia Awareness Project being run by Fife Council. And I was given the privilege to assess our local bus station in Glenrothes. Unfortunately, we did find a number of challenges, but worked with the bus station management staff on ideas that might be included in any future refurbishment programme to make the bus station more dementia friendly.
So in recent months, Carl, myself and Jerry and others have been exploring an opportunity to improve bus services as part of the About Dementia programme, which is hosted by Age Scotland. Carl and I are leading the Transport and Mobility Group, and our aim is to explore how people with dementia can play a role in influencing policy that affects us all in getting out and about on a daily basis.
Yeah, and to put this into context, we started this work, we started it last year, and started to develop our ideas at the beginning of this year. But of course, you know, since then, everything has changed with coronavirus and so on. But in many ways, you know, this feels like a good time to start thinking about this and the need to create sustainable local public transport services. And, you know, it's never been more important, particularly if we want to build, you know, stronger local communities and avoid a car-led recovery. And not only do we want to understand, you know, local needs, but we also need to understand what's going to help the collective confidence of people living with dementia, and indeed all of us, in terms of getting back on buses and public transport in the future.
People with dementia have always needed to overcome barriers to travel with the lack of confidence of the use of public transport. When I was first diagnosed with dementia, I didn't have a choice. I actually surrendered my driving licence, which meant for the first time in many, many, many years, I actually had to use public transport. It was a totally new experience for me, but now I totally depend on the buses to get out and about for those everyday journeys that people take for granted, like going to the shops to get shopping or going to doctor's appointments. And not only is it a big deal for me to get it right, it's a big deal for my wife, my children, and other basically unpaid carers. I need to be able to contribute, or I need to be able to feel as if I'm contributing to the running of my family unit, which in turn takes pressure off my wife, who actually is still working full time, and my children who are at college. So it's highly important for their well-being that I can actually get about independently.
So this brings us to the Better Buses project. In 2019, the Transport Act provided new powers, a number of new powers to local authorities to enable them to ensure that local buses meet social needs. And we wondered, are there opportunities for people with dementia to get involved in helping that to happen? So in September of this year, we reached out to people with dementia and transport organisations to plan a roundtable discussion to explore what these opportunities might be. And in late October, just a few weeks ago, we brought around 20 people together online, including representatives from Transport Scotland, Transform, East Lothian Council, Living Streets, Dementia Friendly Prestwick, Pastoral, About Dementia, and many others. And we heard stories of recent travel experiences, including Jerry's story of the 2 buses with the same number. I think, Jerry, you were going to tell us about that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, prior to lockdown, I could get a bus directly from my house, just outside the door there, to either the town centre to do my shopping, or to Kirkcaldy to go to the Alzheimer's Centre in Kirkcaldy where we do all our activities. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, this service was taken off. And it now takes me at the moment 2 buses to get from my house to go to food shopping, and 2 buses to get from my house to Kirkcaldy. And unfortunately, both these buses have the same numbers as well. So not only is it confusing to have to change buses at some point in time, it's also confusing because the numbers are the same.
So alongside these real life stories, we also had presentations by Transport Scotland from their lead for bus policy, taking us through the new Transport Act, and also Transform Scotland presented on the Love My Bus project. And we learned about the challenges and opportunities ahead for government and local authorities in putting some of these powers into place, and discussed ways in which people with dementia might be able to help.
In short, we came up with about 5 ideas that all point to one key need that we see as a real opportunity for people with dementia to make a difference. And that seemed to be to bring together a range of resources that government, local authorities and bus operators can use to help to put these new powers into place. Organisations and networks of people with dementia are already experienced in creating and sharing resources that not only describe lived experience, but also provide guidance for working with people with dementia as researchers and designers and colleagues. So if governments, local authorities or bus operators are looking for examples of current travel challenges, information or guidance on how to engage and work with disabled people, or inspiration and ideas for doing things different, we think we have an idea that could help out.
Yeah, so we're still at an early stage. Although we've been working away at this for a while, it's really only in the last couple of weeks when we've started to speak to policymakers and people with dementia that the ideas have really started to take shape. And we think that the resources will fall into 2 main categories. And the first one is around personal experience. So we think that we can capture individual experiences of using the bus, ideas for improving services, as well as capturing top tips and hacks from people with dementia about using bus services. And they're already doing these sorts of short videos and audio messages to share experiences. And things like the Dementia Diaries website is a really good thing to have a look at, a really good example of this. But we also felt it was quite important that we should also include other people as well. So that might be family members or carers. And indeed also the people who are providing the services, such as bus drivers, who have a real role. Their roles have really changed dramatically over recent months, and it'd be really good to get an understanding of their experiences too.
The second part of this, we think, is guidance. And so much work has been done already by and with people with dementia to develop resources. And there's loads of guidance out there already on how to involve people in advisory groups, writing dementia-friendly information, involving people with dementia at conferences and events and this kind of thing. So we think that combining these personal experiences and linking them to the needs of those putting the new transport powers into action, we think we can develop a really new a valuable new resource for operators, authorities and policymakers. And we see this as a national online resource, but our networks of people with dementia and organisations work very much at a local level, and we think we can use offline methods as well to collect and share information too.
Other ideas that we've developed could become part of this resources. These include developing case studies of good passenger engagement, a process for developing bus charters to encourage partnerships at a local level, and online training workshops by people with dementia for bus operator staff. Again, something that we've already had experience doing.
So to sum things up, we set out to explore if there were opportunities for people with dementia to influence transport policy. And it turns out that the revised powers within the new Transport Act provide a range of opportunities. So through our conversations, we also think there's an appetite within national and local government, as well as other organisations, for the information, experience and expertise that people with dementia can bring. And we wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about what we've been doing, firstly to let you know, but also to invite you to get involved.
And as we've said, it feels important more than ever before to rebuild everyone's confidence to use public transport, while helping local authorities and operators to use the powers in the Transport Act to build better bus services. Our next steps are to seek funding and support and partnerships that can help to take these ideas forward. And we welcome any ideas that you might have that can help with this. We've already got good contacts in Edinburgh, East Lothian, South Ayrshire, and others, but we think there are opportunities to work across all areas in Scotland. So if you think there are opportunities to make links with organisations in your area, then please do get in touch.
We hope you'll agree that by working with people with dementia, resources can be developed that will benefit the implementation of the Transport Act and will also help to ensure that future policy is inclusive. If you work with people with dementia, you'll probably get right for everybody else. For a lot of people with disabilities, because dementia is not all about the mind. There's visual impairment, hearing impairment, touch, feel. So if you can get it right for that, you'll get it right for quite a lot of disabilities. Yeah, it'd be great. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Andy and Carl for allowing me to be involved in this cross-party group. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to Andy, Carl, and myself. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks, Jerry. And I'd just like to echo Jerry's thanks for having us with you tonight. I'm very happy to take some questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much to all three of you. And I think that the key thing of working with people rather than doing things for people or to people, whoever we are, is just so fundamental. And I know that there are a considerable amount of people here tonight who not only will be interested in asking questions, but also in spreading the word of your project and in relation to the new powers that are coming through from the Transport Act and the guidance and really to make buses right for everybody, you know, so that everybody can travel on them. So thank you very much, as I say, to all of you. And I'm going to open it up for questions now. So if you would, there is just a comment already from Emma who says, could the presentation, which I think was Keith's presentation, be made available with the minutes? So with your permission, Keith, we would do that. And I should have said at the beginning, and I apologise for not having done so, that this the meeting has been, I think, recording, and so we would have the information from the second presentation that you've made as well. But if anybody feels that they don't want to be part of that, if they just pop in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we don't actually have the bit that you've said, if you have any reason not to wish to be recorded. I hope that's clear. Again, apologies for not highlighting that at the beginning. So could we just go to any questions at all? And I do see that we've got something from David Giles. If you wanted to say a bit more about the point about young adults, if we could start with that. And perhaps if you say, as I said, if you're representing an organisation, and also who you'd like to particularly direct your question to, or else we'll just keep it open and see who'd like to come back. Okay, remembering we've also got Alexander Dennis question possibilities as well. So great. So Andy, could we just start with you, please?
Do you mean
sorry,
me?
No, I'm David. Sorry, David. Sorry, my screen's jumping up and down, and I'm trying to pretend it isn't. But if I have to go, I will come back. But I'm sure that Colin or someone will eminently continue with the question thing. I'm getting a bit of a joggly screen at the moment, but there we go. Yeah. Right. Okay. Sorry, David.
It was as much an observation as anything. I lead, or used to lead, health walks with people, some of which had people with dementia on them. And some also had people with learning difficulties on them. And we found that the training we had in leading health walks for people with dementia worked very well for people with learning difficulties as well. But my thought is another community that sometimes gets a bit frightened off the idea of using public transport are young adults who have always been ferried everywhere in cars by their parents. And the kind of resource you're talking about might actually be a good way of introducing them to the kinds of things that are involved in using a bus. That's really, I just wanted to throw that into the discussion. I think it feels a very positive development.
Great, thanks, David. Did somebody want to come back on that from any of the three from the second presentation, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm happy just to jump in quickly to say thanks very much. It's a great point, actually, and we often in these projects start off with people with dementia, but then people with other disabilities tend to come in, and there are often lots of overlaps in the work that we do. And as you said, young adults, people with learning difficulties, all kinds of things come into this work. And as Jerry was saying, we often work with people with visual impairment, people who are deaf, because some of the issues are very similar, and there's no point in reinventing the wheel. So. And also the collective voice is a helpful thing as well to get messages across to people.
Right. And did Craig or Gerald want to come in on that point as well, or not?
Just to say, good to hear about your experience as a walk leader. And to echo what Andy said, that a lot of the groups that we're working with, particularly Dementia Friendly Prestwick, have a focus on people living with dementia, but actually they have a community-wide approach. They want to engage with everybody, for those reasons.
Great. And I see in the chat box that CPT Scotland would like to come in. Who's that who'd like to come in there?
Hi, sorry, that's me. Should be my name in there, not my organisation, but I'm Paul White, the Director of Confederation of Passenger Transport Scotland, which is the trade association for the bus and coach sectors. Thanks to the presenters for two excellent presentations. On the second one, I was going to maybe ask Andy and Carol, when you were talking about your round table and the people who attended to discuss your issues, you didn't mention bus operators, and I wondered, had there been much engagement with bus operators to date? I know that through CPT, our members have signed up to a charter with RNIB and a bus passengers charter with Bus Users UK to look to highlight the issues that certain passenger groups have and to do better where possible. So you may be pushing on an open door. I know that we also have worked at a UK level to create a driver's CPC, a professional certificate of professional competence, the training that the drivers have to do every 5 years, so many hours on hidden disabilities, and that's a good way to get in there. And if there's a module that counts towards that training, then operators are very happy to take that on board and make sure the drivers are trained using those CPC eligible modules. So yeah, just to encourage engagement with operators if you hadn't had any so far, but you may well have done so.
That's a great point. Thank you. It was a matter of timing, actually, just getting people involved in that call. But we have had a great chat with Lothian since, actually, which is really good. And we completely forgot to say that Jess, who's also in this call, presented at that, and ran the Love My Bus project, which has a number of contacts with operators, obviously. So we're hoping to just sort of make those links through our different contacts. But thanks for that. Yeah.
Great. And Colin's highlighted that Stuart has raised his hand in some way or other with the raise hand feature, I think. So Stuart Hay, if you'd like to come in now and just ask whoever you want to ask or make whatever comment you want to make. Thank you.
Yes, Stuart Hay, 11 Street, Scotland. Can I just say that these are some of the best presentations I've seen across Party Group. Really, really inspiring stuff. So thank you, everybody, tonight. It's really, given there's all this good practice, and especially using technology, that sort of thing, is there a weakest link here in terms of the infrastructure around buses? And I'm thinking of the work we've done to look at the walk to bus stops, the bus stops themselves, which are not particularly pleasant places, and a lot of time the information at the bus stops. You then get on the bus and the road surfaces are pretty broken up in places like Edinburgh, and there's a lack of bus priority. So I think there's an issue around local government. So my question really is, what can we do to get local government to help deliver this type of stuff?
Who'd like to come in on that, on local government?
Jerry has a hand up.
Yeah.
Too many people on the screen.
Yeah, great, Jerry, Gerald, go for it.
I think it's a postcode lottery. We've tried to get our local bus companies involved in dementia friendly, and it's, to be honest, for 2 years we've been banging our head against the wall. So I think it depends where you live. I know Lothians seem to have a good rapport, but certainly in Fife, it's very difficult to get people on board with this sort of thing. Like, So maybe something nationally that they all have to do would be a good idea, like some sort of charter that all the bus companies have to adhere to, like would be a good thing, like.
Right, thanks very much, Gerald. Could I bring in Jim Demption now, who's got his hand up, and then go straight to Sarah Boyack, who's also got a question, because we're getting quite short of time and I want to be sure to bring everyone in, and I'm doing my best with that. Great, thanks. Jim.
Thanks, Claudia. Yeah, Jim Densham from Cycling UK in Scotland. Yeah, we're really interested in linking up, especially on rural routes, cyclists with bus services and helping people, take their bikes on buses. So it was really good last year to see the Borders bus X62. And Keith, I think your company built those buses. I was really interested to know if other services or other companies, even outside of Scotland, had showed interest in, quite simply putting 4 or however many bike stands on their buses to sort of increase that potential for people.
No, I've had quite a bit of interest actually, mainly from National Express, Explore Dundee and Stagecoach, and they're looking at carrying 3 buses on board their vehicles. Obviously, they've got to buy new vehicles. In fact, Joanne, I think Christine's looking at retrofitting some buses with bike racks. So yes, there's been a lot of interest since Border Buses launched it, and the feedback from cyclists like yourself and more people using the buses to get to other places and see the rest of the country.
Great, and could I bring Sarah in, please?
Yeah, thanks. See, when somebody said, how can we get local government to get more interested? I was thinking I've got several answers to that one. And it weaves in, the question I have is about how we make buses attractive again to people, because in some ways we're being told not to use buses just now. We're kind of told not really to travel. And there's a massive financial issue for bus companies, I think, to keep going and to keep their services going. So I'm kind of interested in, there's out of the presentation tonight, there's one thing which is about having buses that are really good quality, are modern, are fit for the future, and they're going to be interesting to use. So for me, being able to go to areas where I can't currently go with a bike and go on a mini holiday, that sounds exciting. But there's something also about attracting people back to buses and making them feel comfortable. And I think some of the work that you're talking about in terms of people with dementia or young people, for some people, mixing and sitting beside folk is going to be quite unnerving for a while. So I think there's something about how do we make buses more attractive? Is it marketing? Is it the quality of the buses? Is it the staff being welcoming? So, do people wear little tags so that the bus drivers actually give them a decent time, not a hard time? I think lots of bus drivers are going to want to be helpful, but the thing with a mask, if you've got one of those lanyards, it says that I'm asthmatic, I shouldn't be wearing a mask. There's something about understanding your customer base and being friendly, and some of the best practice, getting that shared around. But I think there's a really big issue about us feeling that buses are important coming back post-pandemic. And it's just how we promote that and make sure that the bus companies are still there, and the councils, like in Lothian, the reason the bus company is so good is they're kind of accountable and they're quality, and they've got resource, and they've got a lot of people use the bus company, and that gets more people to use the bus company. There's something about success breeds success. So I'm kind of interested in, out of tonight, what are the key things in terms of low energy, electric, but also approachable, friendly, respectful bus companies that look after their passengers. Thanks, Claudia.
Great. Who'd like to go first?
Jerry's waving there.
Right, Gerald, over to you.
Apologies, I don't want to be stealing the show or nothing. Like,
don't worry, you go.
I actually wear one of those young lanyards on the bus, and I've never been stopped by the bus drivers, but I think something like that would be great for training, in training sessions for bus drivers. Like, as part of learning to be a bus driver, you should be learning that these sort of things are available and what they stand for, if that makes sense. Like,
thanks. And to others who are on the panel, perhaps you'd like to respond, Go ahead, whoever wants to go next.
Yeah, if I could just jump in. We've worked a number of times with East Lothian Council, who've done some great work around bus services and in particular working with people with dementia. And as part of our roundtable, we discussed their bus charter, which they came out with a few years ago. And we saw that as an opportunity to maybe bring different people together. So in that case, it would be passengers, operators and local authorities together to agree what the charter would be, to agree what services should and could look like in a local area. And to Sarah's point, I think, you know, those are the kind of opportunities where we could bring people together and surface some of the challenges and some of the good things that are happening that we can copy around the country, and actually sort of create agreements between each other as to how we could create better services and have, you know, good, well-designed buses, well-designed services, well-trained staff. It would almost be a, you know, kind of a charter that would help us to plan that into the future. So I think there are opportunities to do that in other places.
Right, thank you. And just before we come to Keith, I don't know if you wanted to respond to that question from Sarah, Keith, but there are actually two other questions that are specifically for you. And I think we will need to make those the last two. So if I could come to Fergus Bowden and also to Julianne Robertson, who've got questions for you, and then we'll wind up this part of the agenda, I'm afraid. Okay, so first of all to Fergus, please.
Hi, Keith. Yeah, it's Fergus from Friends of Scotland. You touched on the two sort of future ways to fuel buses that you've identified of hydrogen and electric battery. And I was just wondering if you thought if there's been particular interest in either of these, or if you thought there's maybe reasons that one might see more interest in the other.
Okay, well, battery electric is the one that's been around the longest, and it's also the easiest to deploy. And the problem we have just now with hydrogen is the availability of hydrogen. Certainly green hydrogen, you can get brown hydrogen, but it's not easy to get green hydrogen from electrolysis. And then the hydrogen filling stations, they also become a little bit of a pain too, because they're so large in bus depots, and they take up a lot of room, which would normally be filled with buses. Don't get me wrong, electric buses also have a space grab as well, because you need the charging islands in place. But at this point in time, the way battery growth, we started just a few years ago at 324 kilowatt hours on a single deck bus, and next year we'll be at 449 kilowatt hours. So that's us getting over 200 miles range out of single deck buses. And that density is going to continue to grow. As far as we can see, maybe 10% up to 14% year on year growth just now. The other dilemma I think we have as a nation is that to create hydrogen, you actually use 2.5 times as much electricity than you would if you just put it into a battery electric bus. And as we electrify more for heating and public transport, then where is that electricity going to come from? Because it's already a bit scarce as it is today. We're not going to have low tariff and peak tariff in the future. Everything's going to be peak. So we need to start thinking about how we use that electricity effectively.
Great, thank you. Can I bring in Julianne, please, as well?
Hi, sorry, just a couple of observations about the last couple of things that were discussed as well. In terms of hidden disabilities, I wonder if drivers, as a result of COVID, will be more aware of hidden disabilities and things like that, the lanyards and things that people are wearing now. Previously, really, it was only the FISL card that we saw in usage, and now they're having to make a distinction daily between who's wearing a mask and who's not, and being much more aware of that. So that's just a wee observation. And also in terms of what Sarah was saying about the appeal of buses and things, we definitely find that when we've put new buses and higher quality buses, higher spec buses on, that's definitely upped our patronage. So that's something that is certainly an influence when people are choosing whether or not to take the bus. But I did have a question for Keith as well, really quickly. It was to ask if COVID, if you foresee any change in the way that buses are designed because of COVID, with respect to the way that people have to distance and, you know, rearward seats and things that are being blocked off. Are people asking, do you think, or will they ask for different designs in case this is something that we have to deal with for a long time, or again at some point in the future?
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer as well. Currently, we have COVID screens that we can fit between seats, and obviously isolating the drivers as well, giving them fresh air and keeping as much fresh air flowing through the bus as possible. Those are the guidelines that are given to us by the medics and all bus operators like yourself, Julianne. We're all trying to abide by that. The difficulty we have with trying to segregate people is, in the future, I imagine we'll still want to be able to move a lot of people. We don't want to increase the number of cars on a road because that's heading in the wrong direction. We need to encourage people to use public transport. I think face masks at this point in time is helping. Hopefully, come the end of the year, will be a drag for everybody and it will make us immune to it all. We'll see what happens. But I wouldn't say in bus design we're looking to go to segregation at this point in time, because I think there's still a lot happening medically, and with the science is changing as well. We're just monitoring it for now.
Right, thanks very much. And having said that, that was the last question. I feel that I should really enable Alison, as she's a convener as well, to ask a quick question or make a quick comment. And then I've got a question for Alison as well. So that's from Matters Arising. So Alison, over to you.
Thank you. And apologies for late arrival. The southwest wind made my cycle home 10 minutes longer than usual. But yeah, as somebody who commutes my 12-mile round commute, either bike or bus, and totally spoiled Edinburgh, you know, Lothian buses, we are spoiled. I appreciate that when I travel elsewhere. But just seems to me, I mean, personally, I feel quite comfortable on the buses. People are being sensible, the drivers are being grand, but it seems to me just like the perfect time to introduce the concept of being able to take your bike on a bus because there is more space. I'm just wondering if this is something that anyone is looking at. I mean, I know. Oh, the other thing I just want to point out as well, when you get on a bus, one of the big changes just now, obviously, is all the windows are open, which can be a bit parky in Edinburgh. Obviously, today's incredibly mild, but, you know, that's going to be a challenge for some people who have to use the buses. You know, a lot of older people who might normally use them would find it very, very uncomfortable. I mean, to be honest, I think there are health benefits there, because getting on a bus in a normal winter when we've all got, you know, potentially other, you know, the cold virus and so on. I mean, yeah, you know what I'm saying. There are challenges here, but I think there are opportunities as well. I'm just wondering on that redesign thing, if we might start thinking a bit better about integration, given this is the cross-party group on cycling, walking and buses. I thought I'd put that out there. But right, thanks.
I'll come to Keith on that first, and quick answers, please, from everyone.
On the bus design for carrying cycles, we already have designs. Border Buses was the first in Scotland really to go with carrying cycles down to Peebles and the mountain bike trails. Stagecoach and National Express, Explore Dundee, have also expressed interest in carrying bikes as well, and we've provided them with designs. On the fresh air issue, we're told by medics just now to open as many windows to, obviously we don't infect each other with COVID, but all our vehicles have HVAC systems which are controlled, bringing fresh air and recirculating air. But at this point in time, the reason the hoppers are open is so we don't catch COVID. Safeguard people.
Thanks. And are there other comments from the other speakers just before I ask Alison the question which came from any other business or Matters Arising, sorry. Any other comments from the other three speakers? Not right now. Okay, Alison, it was just that in Matters Arising, one of the outstanding items was whether we'd had a response from the Scottish Government regarding the letter that you sent regarding traffic regulation orders, which Dave had drafted, Dave Defer, and I think might have gone from your office. But if you're not able to let us know now, perhaps you could kindly let Colin know so that could be put onto the website.
Yeah, I don't actually know. You know, as sure we'll all appreciate there's quite a backlog in correspondence at the moment. So not as far as I'm aware, but I will confirm and let Colin know.
That's great. And if maybe we haven't heard back, if you could do a wee chase, that would be terrific from your office as and when. Thank you. Great. Well, I want again to thank everybody for the really inspiring presentations. And I hope that I know there's a way of saving the chat with all the references to different groups and things that have come up, which could perhaps be done by yourself, Colin, as secretary, just not to put you on the spot too much, I hope.
That's okay.
That's lovely. And it just remains now to highlight that before the May elections, there's probably only one meeting, and Colin's suggesting that might possibly be in March, I would say maybe early March, and has put forward some dates, possibly Tuesday, the 9th of March, 6 to 7 p.m. And we're not sure about recesses and all that, but I think that definitely isn't within a recess. So I think we could say we would go for that with the agreement of the group. And lastly, Colin reminds us that the last meetings have looked at walking in March, walking and cycling in September, and obviously, of course, buses today. And he makes the suggestion that it would be possible to have a more generic meeting, as this will be the last meeting of this session of the Parliament in March, with the agreement of the group, and suggesting possibly looking towards the elections. And an option would be to see if we could get a minister to speak as well, which has been suggested before, or Suzanne from Cycling UK has previously offered to speak on Walk, Cycle, Vote. I don't know if you wanted to add anything more, Colin, or if we could see if there are any quick comments from others. But do you want to say something first, Colin, on that?
No, nothing further from me. Suzanne is on the call, so I don't know if she wants to chip in.
Suzanne?
Hello.
Hear from you. Thanks.
Yes, we'd love to talk Walk, Cycle, Vote. We'd love to talk particularly about its work with disabled activists over the last 18 months and how that has informed the asks which we've developed, which will be soon unveiling to you all.
Okay. I mean, with the agreement of the group, it would seem to me that it would be good if any of the organisations that have asks coming forward to the Scottish Parliament elections might like to do a very short pitch to highlight those. But also there is the suggestion of a minister being invited, and I wouldn't want to make that necessarily a sort of very specific political event, but more in a ministerial capacity, perhaps, just to highlight the main issues that have come up in the cross-party group over the last year or so. And I don't know if people think that's agreeable, that twin sort of pronged approach. Does that, is there anyone who, should I say rather, is there anyone who objects to that, who's got a better suggestion? That'd be okay, would it? No hands risen. Okay, well, we'll ask Colin to kindly action that for the next meeting, and we're going to go for provisionally Tuesday the 9th of March from 6 to 7 o'clock. So as there wasn't any other business, it only remains for me to say, however you're traveling, be safe and keep well. And thank you very much for attending what has been a fascinating meeting for us all, with lots of things to carry forward into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks all. Great meeting.
You.
Bye.
Bye.